Thank you so much. Very good evening, one and all. Absolutely excited to be here. It's a real pleasure to see some of the known faces, some new faces, amazing discussions that I've had over the last 2 days. So what I'll be doing is I'll be using my allocated time to take you to some of the most fundamental parts of cybersecurity, right? While on one side we are looking at a passwordless future, at the other end of the spectrum, we are still dealing with it, right? I'll be touching upon this, that how is it that businesses need to reflect, the security leaders need to reflect inside and see that what's typically happening in that layer of password management, what's happening in that credential management space. So this is how we are going to be, I've structured my presentation. We'll look at some parts of the threat landscape. The password headache, trust me, we believe it's a headache. So whatever is a headache has to be fixed, has to be managed well, right? The gap analysis, there is certainly a gap that I'll touch upon. The password-less future, right? And there's a reason why the less is in a brackets. And why is there a need for password manager, right? So we are talking about so many advanced technologies, there are so many processes, so much of awareness, so much of education going in, but still, there has to be a need, right? I'd like you to give it some good few seconds to read through these statements. I'm sure all of these attacks are known. These were in the media. What I've done is I've just copy-pasted the statements made by their authorized spokesperson to the press. We all know of these attacks, right? Now, this is where the problem begins. And I'm sure we can credit these organizations in their technology maturity, in their cybersecurity maturity, with their process, with their audits, with their security audits, the findings and the awareness that they were creating within their organizations. But this is the reason. And this is what is being missed today. We are not looking at the intrusion point. Yes, the attack happens, but for somebody to execute an attack, somebody has to enter. Somebody has to enter the environment, right? Enough and more research has shown that 85% of the breaches involve a human element. So when we say human element, it could be a weak, compromised credential, reused passwords, or it could be a phishing attack where the user has accidentally clicked on a link and the credentials are populated there and they have put in their credentials. So that's on one side, and the other side, our digital landscape is evolving, right? Look at our mobile phones. We have more and more apps. There are so many apps which we are not even using, and somewhere we have created an account for each of these apps. There is a credential that we have actually created for us to use the app for the first time. So what's really happening? Let's understand the problem in a little bit of detail. And to do that, I have taken the support of this meme. This is the most intelligent, most brilliant mistake that many of our employees and sometimes we ourselves make. We try to be smart, right? Having the same password across. And that's where the problem begins. I would like you to think of every employee in the organization. They could be whichever generation, right? This is a mistake that we make. So passwords 1, 2, 3, personal details, all of these information is what we use in the password. And look at our personal details. Very simply put, we are so carefree about it. To avail a 20% discount at a restaurant, we fill in all the forms, or we fill in the form with all the details. Our name, spouse name, date of birth, email ID, everything that can identify ourselves as a user is there on the form, and which we don't even know what they will do after this. And we know that it will take probably some seconds, some minutes for a threat actor to use their advanced algorithm and to crack such passwords. That's where the intrusion begins. Every year, we at LastPass conduct a survey across individual respondents, and we publish it in a report called The Psychology of Passwords. I would encourage all of you to download that report, and I'm sure that will form a very good basis for you to create your cybersecurity awareness programs within your organizations. When we surveyed individuals, what really came out was, when we asked them, right, that do you agree that compromised passwords are concerning? 79% said yes. So it's not that there's no awareness, people know. But look at on the action side, 51% continue to rely on their memory. And we know when we will rely on our memory to reduce our cognitive burden, we are going to keep simple passwords. We are going to use easy passwords, and we are going to replicate the passwords across the applications in our personal world and then take it to our work also, putting in our organization at risk. 92% people, 92% know that using the same password or a variation is a risk. When we ask them, do you know it's a risk? Do you think it's a risk? Yes, no, maybe. Yes, they know. And 65% always or mostly still use the same password or variation. So a lot of awareness, not translating into enough action. And this is for all of us. It's not that if one is a security leader or somebody is in the cybersecurity space is not making this mistake. That's the point that I want to touch upon. 45% of the survey respondents did not change their passwords. And I'll tell you the time duration. From the time when COVID struck, people went into working from anywhere, went back to working from home. No matter how many security leaders told them, for next 9 months, 45% of the respondents said they did not change their passwords. And this has respondents from India as well. On the other hand, there's something called the Lindy effect. I'm sure many of us know that. But the Lindy effect is something that if something has been in existence for quite some time, there's a likelihood that it will remain there for a very long time. This is true for passwords. I know there was a press statement where I was reading that Mr. Bill Gates had announced the death of passwords in 2004 and mentioned that Microsoft is very actively working on that. We are getting into 2023, right? We are still not done with it. That is still the first and foremost authentication method because everybody understands it. All age groups, everybody, no matter what background you come from, that's the most simplest thing. Every user wants to authenticate themselves with a user ID and a password. So passwords are here to stay. But yes, passwordless is a journey which I'll be talking about. So with whatever I've said, the gap is real. So there is a gap. What I want to establish, if I was to connect the dots, human error, specifically passwords, is the biggest reason. Technologies deployment has happened in the form of SSO, PAM, and then coupled with an authentication layer further on that. But still, there is an issue. We'll try to see what that issue is. But before that, I want to touch upon with this slide. This is the data from the Mandiant report. This report is last year. And what they talk about is the dwell time. We know the dwell time is the time that a threat actor is residing in the system before actually getting detected. Over the years, this has come in, and this is Asia Pacific specific data. This is only for APAC. Now the dwell time has reduced. There is no doubt about that, but there are reasons for that. Yes, there have been technology advancements that have happened, but at the same time, today threat actors want to execute whatever the reason they got into the infrastructure, and they want to leave very fast. So there's a lot that the threat actors, whether they are amateurs or the state-sponsored, the big threat actors, they are the ones who want to get into the public domain and announce, hey, look, we have executed this. This company we have breached. That's what's typically happening. And this is what Mandiant says, that mismanaged multi-factor authentication, weak passwords, and a lack of account segmentation will almost certainly lead to a breach. So they analyze the maximum number of breaches, right? They are the ones who do globally, they have analyzed this, and this is the reason that they have found. So let's look at what's happening around the world, right? Some of the regional trends that are emerging from the government side. So there's a lot of focus on strengthening the data privacy and protection, the legislation. So there's a lot of focus around that, and we know that in India, we are seeing a lot of work that the government is putting in to strengthen the laws around this. There are mandatory breach regulations. We know the countries, the advanced countries already have that. There's an increased organizational and consumer awareness. Today, the consumer is also aware about this. And at the same time, government is also advising that how do we do this? How is it that this risk can be mitigated? Look at some of the advisories which are coming from this region of Asia Pacific. This is what Australia Australia's Cybersecurity Center has said. I'm not going to read through this. This is for you to read, but this is what they say. This is what Singapore CERT has said, right? This is come there. Everybody is talking about passwords. It's about time that we reflect on ourselves and try to fix this and understand these gaps. CERT New Zealand. And last but not the least, sometime this year, in around October this year, CERT India. If you go to their advisory section, this is the recent advisory that they have mentioned. So where does an enterprise password manager play? That's the most common question that I'm asked. That we have investments in SSO, we have investments in PAM. It's mostly confused that if the PAM is taken care of, if there's a SSO taken care of, where does it fit in? So let me try to demystify this a little bit. Let's look at the identity stack today, and depending on the organization's cybersecurity maturity, an organization could have all of this or could be still building up the stack. So there are cloud applications that every employee of yours will use. Day to day, every employee will come in, will log in, and they'll be using these applications. Within that, in the same horizon of at your workspace, you have some of the cloud and shadow IT apps, which some of the functions have brought in themselves, right? While the CISOs have approved it, they know of it, they might not know of it, but this is something is a part of the organization which the employees are using it. And at the extreme end, we have the servers, databases, devices. This is how typically the application is spread across. Now let's look at how are we protecting this. So we have users on one side, the day-to-day users, which are accessing the cloud applications, and the admins on the other end, which are looking at some sensitive infrastructure, sensitive applications. And what we have done here, this side of the application, we have tied it with a MFA SSO perfectly fine. No problem with that. On the other end, we bring in a PAM solution. That's what I was mentioning to. Now look at the center stack. These are the intrusion points, and unfortunately, when a breach happens, it's an organizational breach. It's not a departmental breach. These are the applications where you have, this is the place where you have the shadow IT apps or the legacy apps, which for some reason, we cannot tie to SSO. But when a breach happens, nobody can say it's that department's breach, not my responsibility. Right? The ownership resides with the security team. So what we say is, we coexist and complement the existing investments for the world, which is completely unprotected with an encrypted vault, a 256-bit encrypted vault, and that could be accessed using a MFA. So typically, all of this, the user actually from behind the vault need not even type in a single credential. They can have this journey also as passwordless as the SSO. Just open the vault and launch every application. The users need not even think of what passwords are there in place, right? That's how I thought that this would be a good representation of how the landscape is. Some of the use cases, not going to read through all of these, but yes, improving password controls and password policy enforcement. We all have password policies, right? The problem is we have policies. What about the quantification of those policies? We know that we have said that these many characters, uppercase, lowercase, special character, and the policy is floated. It is followed by a lot of cybersecurity awareness, training programs, which unfortunately do not get the required attention till the very last date of the till the very last deadline, right? Now with all of this, if there is a tool that's available that could help you quantify, right, how passwords are generated, or let a password manager generate passwords for you, which could take 1 billion years for threat actors to compromise. Phishing attacks, very simple. If an application is not in the vault and a user clicks on that link, the passwords will not populate. The credentials won't populate on that application, thereby reducing the risk of phishing attacks. Third-party risk. So many organizations are here which have third parties working on our applications, or we working as third party for our customers, right? Look at how we share passwords. If I would have asked this question to 10 people that do you have a view of how the passwords are shared, they don't have a view. because the passwords are shared in WhatsApp, emails, right? In a very loose manner, which shouldn't be the case. So first, even sharing in the wrong way is something that one needs to worry about. At the same time, not having a view and control on the hygiene of that and not being able to tie it back to an audit trail of who gave an access to whom and for how long, that's a very big problem. And from a compliance perspective, I talked about certain advisories coming in from government. At the same time, what I understand is many countries in the European Union today have less cyber insurance premiums if the businesses tell them that they have password managers in place. Because what everybody is looking at is strengthening the first line of defense. And that's where, friends, the password manager comes in. Thank you so much for your time. And yes, I was on time, right? Thank you.